Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, from wherever you are joining us today. I see some familiar names in our listeners. Hello. And if you're a new listener, welcome. I hope this won't be your last. Please bear with us while we wait for some stragglers. And while we wait, let me introduce myself. I am your host, Katya Derhovagimian, joining you from Toronto, Canada. I do want to flag that if time permits, we will be accepting questions from our audience towards the end of this session. And to ask a question, please type it in the chat and direct your question to the specific guest. I also ask that you please keep your questions to today's topic. If we do not get to your question or may not have time for a Q&A, as it is 10 p.m. on a Tuesday in Yerevan, my deepest apologies. We will keep it handy for a subsequent interview. Thank you once again for your patience and welcome. You are joining 301 space titled Beyond Politics, Unraveling the Present Challenges Armenia Faces. I want to start by introducing today's guests. Mr. Hayk Mamijanyan is a member of parliament and leader of the With Honor faction. In his role as MP, he is also member of delegations to PACE, Euronest, Armenia EU PPC, and the Inter-Parliamentary Union, and he is also chair of the Armenia-Croatia and Armenia-Serbia friendship groups. Welcome, Mr. Mamijanyan.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. I'm thrilled for this format. It's my first time using this X platform. So thanks again for the invitation. I'm looking forward for a very interesting discussion.
And thank you for carving time out of your busy schedule to join us today. And Ms. Aspram Krpeyan, a frequent 301 guest and member of parliament of the Armenia Alliance. Hi, Aspram, and I want to start by wishing you a very happy birthday.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you on this historical day. We'll discuss more about the not my birthday, obviously, but the actual historical events that happened over 36 years ago. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and we will definitely be discussing that. But let's jump into it with you, Mr. Mamijanyan. I want to talk about the corruption scandal in the Ministry of Economy. A recap for our listeners, the former Minister of Economy, Vahan Keropian, resigned last week and was charged and sentenced to 2 months house arrest in connection or for his connection in allegedly assisting Synergy, a software company for governments and nonprofits, in winning the establishment of the Bank of Public Investment Projects competition. Mr. Mamijanyan, can you share your early thoughts on this scandal and perhaps the timing of it, if it at all poses any significance?
Thank you for the question. To be honest, and I'm sure that you and our listeners will agree that it's not the top one topic today, but my 2 cents on this issue will be the following. First of all, such corruption scandals will be revealed in any of the ministries and governmental institutions at the moment. The more than half of the state budget at the moment is used with tenders that are conducted illegally. So any ministry, almost half of its budget is spending without a tender offer, just deciding to have something both from one entity, without a tender, without contest, without discussion, just buying from one entities, and it's obvious that these entities are connected with different representatives of the current ruling party. So to sum up, I don't think this scandal will be the last one. Point one. Second, I do think that there are some intra-party tensions going on in civic contract, and this scandal and the root reasons of this scandal are in the intra-party politics, not in fight of corruption. I would like to stress the attention that there was a big discussion regarding the detaining of two women working at the ministry. Both of them had underage children. One of them was a feeding mother. But there were very many cases of political prisoners when the women were arrested with underage children, and the same as Ms. Krpeyan as well gave the guarantees, written guarantees from them, and there were nothing for the court. But in this case, when the civic contract is interested, of course, those two women were released. So to sum up, there is a lot of corruption going on in Armenia at the moment. The highest ranking officials from the civic contract are involved in it. And this story from the Ministry of Economy was just the tip of the iceberg, and the reasons and the motivation for the revealing of the scandal were, I'm sure, were inter-party politics. It's the division of power between a few people in the civic contract. That's my understanding of this story. Regarding Mr. Keropian and his resignation, my personal opinion is that any person who accepted a political position, I mean a minister, vice minister, deputy minister from Nikol Pashinyan after war, is part of selling of our homeland. So, of course, there are some people who are stating that Mr. Keropian is a well-known businessman, etc., etc., etc. But for me, he's one of the team who had sold my homeland. So I have no tears regarding Mr. Keropian. That's my understanding of this scandal.
Thank you, Mr. Mamijanyan. Aspram, I want to segue into some of what Mr. Mamijanyan mentioned and lean into your legal background. Do you think this is somehow setting a precedent or making an example of these individuals for a larger initiative?
It's interesting to be here today with Hayk because our opinions do align greatly. I do want to second his opinion with regard to systematic state corruption, with regards to dual standards when it comes to affiliated people with the ruling occupational party. So I think it's important to understand that this government, this occupational government, is going to do everything to just put the spotlight on something irrelevant, something not as existential as the challenges that our statehood is facing right now, to just entertain our population with things which are less relevant, as I said, and less existential. And I do consider this instance as such. So it's just something that they resort to every time there is a tension on the borderline, every time there is a negotiation initiative. So I think we'll all of us will see the results soon, but none of the Pashinyan supporters or the ruling party supporters do see this process as a political persecution. So when it comes to serving so-called example, I don't think it's a good one. So it's just something they do to just distract the attention and just that's it. I think it's a distraction, yet another distraction. So not only internal but external as well. So as if they're the fighters and the protectors of democracy, which is non-existent in Armenia right now, unfortunately, and justice as well.
Thank you for that honesty, Aspram. I do want to, segue right into talking about Prime Minister Pashinyan calling for a new constitution and declaration of independence. It seems to have been built up to this point where he's repeatedly criticized our connection to Mount Ararat. He's suggested changing the Armenian coat of arms and the national anthem, and now with his more recent announcement to calling for a new constitution and declaration of independence. Aspram, what are your thoughts on this?
It's yet another attempt to deprive us from our identity, our collective vision of how our statehood should look like, how our future should look like. Where do you want to raise our kids? What are the values? What are the roots that we do want to hold on to? So I think they're just we're we reached the point where after surrendering part of our homeland, after so many destructions and pain, we reached the point where the most sacred attributes of our statehood, the pillars of our statehood, are being are under attack. So I think what they want to do is to erase the identity, the links which connect us to our roots. All of us know that the Constitution, this coat of arms, the flag, everything embodies the struggle, the resistance, the vision of our people. So I'd I think I'd love to see a unity both in Armenia and in diaspora when it comes to this attack. We had our different perspectives on different with regards to different questions, but I think this one really goes against everything that we believe in and we were taught to believe, or we were what we had and what we fought for. So this this act of violence, this and we all know that the request, or the it's not just a request, but the demand to change the constitution is not something that they came up on their own. It's something dictated by the enemy. So, of course, Azerbaijan and Turkey would love to see non-existent Armenian statehood, non-existent Armenian army. They would love to see just a geographical they would prefer to see just a geographical territory named Armenia, with no Armenians, no Armenian identity whatsoever. So by calling us revanchists, by calling us separatists, by calling us occupiers, the real occupiers, the real aggressors are trying to destroy everything Armenian, both within Armenia and externally. So this fight is, I've said this multiple times, this fight is truly existential. And folks in diaspora should be concerned as well, because without an Armenian statehood, without a strong Armenian statehood, without a strong Armenian army, their identity, Armenian identity, is under threat as well. So if we want our kids to be connected with their to their Armenian roots, to their Armenian identity, to their history, language, it's important. It's really very important to preserve our statehood and the sacred pillars on which the Armenian statehood was built.
Thank you, Aspram. And Hayk, I know you've discussed this on other channels previously, as early as last week, but for the sake of this conversation, can you talk to our listeners of how you will oppose Prime Minister Pashinyan's attempts at changing the constitution and Declaration of Independence?
Well, thank you. And there's something that I haven't ever said in any interview. I was planning to make a premiere tomorrow, but the premiere will be up here. Well, first of all, it will be just my humble opinion. So I have no insights, but there are a few thoughts that I would like to share with you. First of all, till this moment, I don't really believe that Pashinyan is going to go to the end with the constitutional changes, with the constitutional reform. I do think that possibility A, it's just a distraction. Possibility B, as Pashinyan is living on a borrowed time, it's just another way to borrow some more time. But he managed to do a very bad thing as usual. He degraded the discourse, the political discourse, to some points that are crucially important for our statehood. But another point is out of the scope at the moment. And the point is that according to my sources, Pashinyan is going to add to the constitution a new point. A point that Armenia is going to become a non-aligned country, or it's called a non-block philosophy, into the constitution. So let me explain it. So by the constitution that he is proposing, according to my source, it has to be written that Armenia cannot be a part of any political military blocs and unions. So the idea is for him not to leave the CSTO, just to write down in the constitution that Armenia is becoming a non-aligned, non-bloc member country, and then send to the say to our to the world, to the our partners, to our allies, that okay, sorry, it's written in the constitution, I cannot be a part of any bloc. I'm not sure if it's written in the Azeri constitution, but everybody, I'm sure, knows that Azerbaijan is a member of so-called not aligned countries union. So that's one of Pashinyan's ideas. So this constitutional reform is very dangerous for our country because everybody understands that Armenia has to have security guarantees. And I'm not discussing if these guarantees at the moment are good or bad, but they have to be at the place. So it's one of the possibilities. Another thing that I'm thinking about this story is that it's obvious that there are no negotiations between Pashinyan and Azerbaijan, or between Pashinyan and Aliyev. It's just the fulfillment of the ultimatums provided by Azerbaijan. So this part of the constitutional reform can be the face saving for Pashinyan. So in the Armenian informational field, in a political discourse, we will discuss for half a year that it's a betrayal to change the constitution, to leave Artsakh out of constitution, to change the preamble of constitution, etc., etc., etc. And after 6 months, when the treaty will, or 7 or a year, it doesn't matter, when the treaty will be published, the treaty between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the point that Pashinyan didn't change the constitution will be his face saving. So he will make a victorious monologue. His interviews are usually a monologue. And he will say, well, I'm a hero. I gave out our homeland. I gave out Artsakh. I've given out, surrendered the enclaves, etc., etc., etc. We have no army. We have no control on our borders. But I managed to save the constitution. So all of these are just possibilities. But I'm sure that one of these scenarios will be in place. So either it will be a non-block logic and philosophy in the new constitution, or it's just a distraction and a basis for Pashinyan's future face saving. Maybe for our listeners, what I'm saying at the moment will sound a little bit ridiculous, but let's go back for 3 or 5 years, and our reality would be ridiculous for all of us. So that's my understanding of what is he going to do. Regarding the change of constitution, Pashinyan has a big problem in this case. By the Armenian law, you need, well, approximately 620,000 votes for the yes to change the constitution. It's a big number, especially taking into account that usually the turnout rate for the constitutional referendums is, well, traditionally low in all countries, especially in Armenia. So it's another challenge for him. There is a chance, and his proxy parties that claim themselves to be oppositional, but I don't know. I believe that nobody believes that Mr. Aram Sarkisyan, the leader of the Harapetutsun party, is in opposition because they are in coalition in the city council with Pashinyan's civic contract. And he has already voiced the idea to have snap elections the same day with the referendum for the constitutional reforms, with the constitutional changes, to have to guarantee a high turnout rate for the constitutional referendum. The problem will be in that case that falsifications of the constitutional referendum will be untraceable in that case. Because you got the idea, if it's only the referendum, it's much easier to monitor and to bring up all the falsifications regarding, first of all, the turnout, and second, the voting. But if you have on the same day the pan-Armenian, well, the national elections, you cannot monitor if the turnout rate is same for the referendum and for the electoral process. So my understanding is possibility number one, it's a distraction. Possibility number two, it can be some way to borrow time. Third possibility, it can be a basis for the future phase saving for him. And fourth, he's really going to these changes. And of course, changing all the important things for our country, starting from the relations with the Armenian Apostolic Church and the state, regarding the family and the institute of the family in our country, and last but not the least, changing Armenia into the non-block, non-aligned logic and making Armenia alone to Azerbaijan and Turkey. That's my understanding of the process. Unfortunately, I cannot give more than just mentioning the possibilities, but I'm pretty sure that it's going to be one of these scenarios.
You mentioned the possibility of early snap election, and I know there are some other experts who have mentioned this as well. I would love to know what your thoughts on this are. I mean, it does seem like a bit of a catch-22, but I'd love to hear what you think, Hayk.
Well, and I'm speaking on behalf of the With Honor faction and the Republican Party of Armenia. As you may know, we were against the snap election in 2021 as well. We do not really believe that it's possible to send Pashinyan home with his cohort, well, not cohort, a band, I guess, a gang, home via elections, via electoral process. And it's not that hard to prove it because, for instance, during the elections for the city council of Yerevan, civic contract lost. Tigran Avignon got only 9% of the votes of the citizens of Yerevan. But still, he is the mayor because they bought off some members of the city council, they bought off a whole faction, etc., etc. We have the same story in Vanadzor. 2.5 years ago, Mamikon Aslanyan won the elections in Vanadzor, and he's in jail for 2.5 years. In Alaverdi, civic contract lost, and again they bought up a few members of the city council and they appointed their mayor. Same story in Vartenis. Same story in Ararat region. So I don't really believe in changing Pashinyan via electoral process. So we do believe in street protests. It's the point number one. Point number two. Again, let's go a little bit deeper. I don't really believe that Mr. Pashinyan is so happy with the idea of snap elections. He don't need it. He has the absolute power. I'm sure he won't gain it in the snap elections. He will still win. We will get I don't know, maybe 40% or something like that. That's my understanding, but it won't be the same picture as it's now. So he will need some coalition partners. Obviously, it will be the Harapetutsum party, the Aram Sarkisyan, Aram Zaveni Sarkisyan's party. Maybe it will be, I don't know, Babajanyan Arman or some, or Lusavora, I mean the Bright Armenia with Edmond Marukyan, etc., etc. But he won't be he won't get the majority by himself. The reason that there are discussions of the snap elections, and if you look at what experts and politicians are speaking about the snap elections, is that, well, Pashinyan is he's a salesman and not a talented one. He's conducting the foreign policy of the country as a salesman. He tries to sell himself to Moscow, tries to sell himself to Washington or the Brussels. And I do really believe that the West, let's frame it like that, sees that. They doesn't believe to his rhetorics, and they want to have a control upon him. And I do believe that the idea of snap election is to have a more Western parliament. And I'm not saying that it's good or bad. I'm just making my prediction or my understanding of the process. To have Pashinyan be very dependent on the parliament. So, to sum up, I don't really believe that Pashinyan himself wants snap elections. I do think that if we will have a snap elections, there will be no change of power, but it will be a coalition government between Pashinyan and few other political forces. Third, I parliamentary one and the extra parliamentary opposition has to be against the step elections because that's not the way to change him. I do think that we have to fight tooth and nails to change him by the street protests. It's my humble opinion and my humble understanding of the processes.
Thank you, Hayk. Aspram, I know you alluded to this earlier, but we have been seeing similarities between President Aliyev's and Prime Minister Pashinyan's playbooks. And when it comes to the Constitution specifically, we've heard President Aliyev make similar claims. In your opinion, how closely is Aliyev influencing these sentiments?
To be short, very closely. I think we do not have sovereignty at this stage when it comes to negotiations, when it comes to anything, any decision for the external policies. So I think everything is being dictated by the enemy, and we've been seeing this constantly. Every decision, every interview, every change when it comes to our army, when it comes to our defense strategy, when it comes to our the future of our statehood. Everything is being influenced by the enemy states, and nothing so far. No decision so far has been made for the Armenian people, for the Armenian statehood, for the strengthening of the Armenian army. So, as you've all have already known, I mean, you all already know, the sovereign territory, more than 200 square kilometers, are under Azerbaijani occupation. Right now, the entire Republic of Artsakh is under occupation right now. They're discussing so-called enclaves, the surrender of these so-called enclaves. They're discussing entertaining the I mean, even the entertainment of or having this idea in the political discourse, and I mean, the change of constitution is a slap to the Armenian people. As it's really painful to see. I mean, to be a witness and to witness this entire situation these days. So I think unless we change the negotiator, unless we change the attitude, unless we unite all of us, will lose the existing homeland very soon. And I'm not being over dramatic. I'm not. I think during all these years, we've tried to warn, we've tried to raise awareness, we've tried to predict the horrific possibilities, but unfortunately we didn't succeed. Unfortunately, we have what we have right now, but still I do believe that it is a possibility to continue the fight for the people of Artsakh, for their right to return. I've been following the ICJ procedures with regards to Israel and the occupation of Palestine, and what our occupational government is trying to convince our people is that international community has this does not have the support for the people's right to self-determination, does not support um, the most fundamental human right, which is the right to self-determination. There is a consensus when it comes to the territorial so-called in the Azerbaijani case, so-called territorial integrity, but the reality is completely different. The reality is so different, and our people should know that our struggle is just. It is possible to reach a point where our brothers and sisters from Artsakh will be able to exercise their right to return to their homeland, to our homeland. It is possible to fight for their right to external self-determination. It is possible to fight for the Armenian identity and Armenian statehood. So I do see our priorities in this, and I do want to encourage all of us to be the advocates, to be the spokesperson for this causes. So yeah, I think the first step toward realizing this is to remove this occupational power for once and all, to really reevaluate the policies that were existent during the 30 and more years in Armenia, and bring all the resources, be it in Armenia or in diaspora, together, and find solutions and ways to bring justice to our people. And I do believe that we, all of us, collectively, we do have the resources to do it. It just requires political vision, commitment, and dedication.
I absolutely agree, Aspram. Thank you for that. I also want to talk about, or continue rather, talking about Pashinyan's narrative in relation to Azerbaijan. He continues to reinforce this need to be copacetic, emphasizing the importance of coexistence, the role of peace and regional cooperation. He presented the Crossroads of Peace project, has given the impression that he is willing to continue negotiations without a mediator. And coming out of his meeting in Munich, he again doubled down on the importance of peace talks, while he also warns that Azerbaijan may be plotting a full-scale war. Hayk, I think this segues well with statements you made in a press briefing rather earlier this month. You had stated that while you agree that Armenia should participate in all peace talks, that you believe there must be an additional negotiator representing Armenian rights. Can you expand on this, please?
Yes, of course. And let's dive into this topic a little bit. First of all, Pashinyan is continuing. Yes, you're right, to speak about peace, etc., etc. But I want to stress your attention into the last events in Sunik regarding the loss of 4 of our soldiers. The previous day, Ministry of Defense shared a press release saying that there will be conducted an investigation, internal one, and if the Armenian soldiers, the Armenian side, is the one that started the fire or breached the ceasefire regime, those soldiers will be punished. So it's the fact. It was published. It's in press release. And I'm not kidding. So it's a press release of the MOD. How do you expect the soldiers to feel themselves on the borderline after that? Second, this one is not a fact. It's according to our sources. There is the soldiers on the borderline are told not to respond to the fire if there is one. And I again repeat, it's not proved, it's just according to our sources. So that's how he deals on the borderline. So let's get back to the peace talks, so-called peace talks, but because there is nothing related to peace in it. Of course, only a fool doesn't want a peace. But why we are accepting an imposed peace? How come that in one part of Europe, all the international leaders are stating that the imposed peace is unacceptable, but it's acceptable in another part of Europe, in Armenia? Talking about mediation, a few years ago, when President Sargsyan was stating that we are not negotiating with Azerbaijan, we are negotiating with the mediators, with the co-chairs of Minsk Group, some individuals, let's name them like that, in the Pashinyan party were starting making jokes, etc., etc., etc. Half a year ago, Pashinyan repeated the same idea, that they need a mediator, that it's impossible to negotiate directly to Azerbaijan, etc., etc. Now he's accepting another Azeri ultimatum, and he's moving towards the negotiations without a mediator, and most importantly, without a guarantor of the treaty. It's a road to nowhere. It's a road to losing Armenia. It's a road to losing statehood, and I totally agree with Ms. Krpeyan on this. So, of course, the negotiation process should not end. It's not, you cannot end it. Even a weak negotiation is better than a war. But for instance, let's take the process of the delimitation and demarcation. Well, the process of the negotiations on the first level, on the level of the head of states and on the level of the ministers of foreign affairs, sometimes stops. There are some intervals in the process, but the process of the talks regarding the demarcation and delimitation process hasn't stopped for a minute. There are meetings going on between Armenians and Azerbaijan. There is an interstate commission, and they are working on it. But I have to refer on the best well-known document on the demarcation and delimitation process. It's the OSCE guide, the OSCE, let's name it a playbook on the demarcation and delimitation. And the red line in this document, or the red line in this guide, is that demarcation delimitation process cannot be conducted under the threat of usage of force. There are Azeri armed forces on the sovereign territory of Armenia. The nearest is 1 kilometer away from the city of Jermuk. There are Azeri forces in Sunik. There are Azeri forces in Yarklik region. What is the Azerbaijani response when the Armenian side tries to tell, okay, you have to surrender, you have to go back from the Armenian territories, from the sovereign territories of Republic of Armenia? The answer is the following, and I mean it's the official one. Let's start the demarcation and delimitation process. If it turns out that those territories are Armenia, and I repeat, we are talking about the territories that are 1 kilometer away from the city of Jermuk, of course we will pull out. So the question is, why the demarcation and delimitation talks aren't stopped till Azeri armed forces will leave our sovereign territory? So we see that the demarcation and delimitation process, well, at least the talks of it, are starting under the threat of usage of force. The other point is that we did have Well, it was the best possibility for our country, the best format, the Minsk group. Pashinyan neglected it. And now there is not a single format accepted from all the sides for the peace talks or the negotiations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. They do it in Brussels, they do it in Washington, they sometimes do it in Moscow, they do it in Tehran in the 3+3 format, well, actually 3+2 format. So there is no format. So what do we have? We do not have a mediator. We do not have a guarantor. We accept all, when I say we, I mean the authorities of Armenia in this instance. They do accept all the ultimatums from the Azerbaijan. And this is what they call the era of peace. I want to stress your attention on the fact that after war, during the so-called Pashinyan's era of peace, we have a few hundreds of soldiers died from the bullets of Azeri mercenaries. A few hundreds. And I'm not even speaking about the forcefully displaced, our brothers and sisters from Artsakh. The idea of Pashinyan, of having the, how he calls this, peace crossroads and Armenian crossroads, I don't know, I don't even, peace crossroad. Well, this project is absolutely irrelevant, absolutely, in all the senses, in geopolitical, in economical, in all the senses. It can't work ever. The roads will never have the load needed, needed for them to be useful. I mean, in economic sense. So it's another one fiction. He made a fancy PowerPoint presentation, a fancy brochure on that, and he disseminates this brochure amongst the ambassadors, amongst the international delegations who are visiting Armenia. But it's another. It's belletristic. It's fiction. So I do not see any possibility of successful negotiations. Why the main negotiator is Pashinyan? Not because I don't like him, not because he's a traitor, not only because he's a traitor, but because he is entering to any negotiation with only one purpose: preserving himself, the power, the post of the prime minister in our country. Believe me, it's his number one priority. I will even paraphrase. It is the only priority. Not to speak too long, but I want you to remember two facts. First of all, was in 2018. Aliyev stated that Pashinyan asked him to lower the tension on the borderline because he has some internal political problems to solve, i.e., to solve his problems with the Republican Party. Yes, there was lowering of the tension at the borderline, and thanks God, of course, there were Armenian soldiers who were saved during those times. But let's be clear, it's obvious that he promised something to Aliyev at that time, because it's impossible that Aliyev would say, of course, if you want to lower the tension, I will do it for you, because you have wonderful brown eyes, an irresistible smile with a golden tooth in your mouth. Obviously, he made some promises back then in 2018. Second fact that I want to our listeners to remember is that during the god-awful parade, the military parade that Aliyev conducted in our Stepanakert on the 9th of November in 2023. During his speech, Aliyev stated, and I almost quote it word by word, after war, there were a few times when revanchist forces, well, Aliyev, Erdogan, and Pashinyan names patriotic national political parties revanchists, had the possibility to take the power in Armenia. And we had to make an aggression upon Armenia and Artsakh to help Pashinyan to stay in power. So it's everything we have to know regarding the relations between Pashinyan and Aliyev and regarding the so-called peace process. There is no peace process. There will be no peace treaty. It's just the acceptance of the Azerbaijani ultimatums. I'm not allowed to reveal a lot regarding the so-called peace treaty, but believe me, there is not a single point that meets the priorities of our country. And of course, there is not a single mentioning of Artsakh in it. Though it's a state secret, I cannot speak a lot on this topic.
I totally understand that, Hayk, and thank you for your candor and really humor in getting through this difficult conversation. Aspram, I do want to give you the opportunity to echo anything that Hayk said or include some of your own thoughts on this topic as well.
With regards to peace treaty, I think it's obvious there can't be peace with an aggressor, an occupier. I think our enemies were very clear and were very honest in their desires so far, and they have always been. They have been openly stating that it's not only this, I mean, we all knew, at least the ones who knew history, who knew the roots of this conflict, that this conflict has never been about Artsakh. It has always been about the Armenian statehood and the existence of Armenian statehood. So our enemies were openly stating that not only Artsakh, but Yerevan, Jermuk, Syunik, every Armenian corner is theirs. So their desires and their vision for their statehood and their country is clear. Unfortunately, we do not have at this stage a government which will represent the interests and the desires and the national vision of the Armenian people, be that in Armenia or in diaspora. So this document that is being negotiated now has nothing to do with peace or has nothing to do with a desire to resolve this long-lasting conflict. It's a surrender document. It's a capitulation document. And I think all of us should take off our I mean, we all wanted to expect the best. We never wanted to see the situation, and when I say we, I mean the general public. We wanted to see, to hope for the best. We wanted to believe that maybe there just inexperienced. Maybe they are just new to this entire political situation. But the reality is that they're just playing the game of our enemies. They're just holding on, doing everything possible to hold on to power, doing everything possible to prolong their era of surrender, because that is the only way that they can benefit from the taxpayers' money, from the power that they hold at this stage. So let's stop calling this treaty a peace treaty and call it a surrender one, because that's precisely what it is. So I think it's never the opposition politicians, especially the ones who are new to this job, if I may call it a job, but we think that it's enough to warn our population once, and it's enough for us to just give an interview and state the risks, and that's it. The entire general public will understand the reality, will react to it properly, but the reality is different. Our work is requires so much energy, so much dedication, so much persistence, and that's what we should do at this stage. We can talk about these issues for hours, talk about the things that we could have done, but I think it's important to briefly analyze the things that we did, to analyze the things that we could have done, but objectively or subjectively weren't able to do, and move forward. We do not have much time to blame one another, to create new enemies, to search the ones, within ourselves to blame, but it's high time to come together, even if we do not share much, because one thing for sure we do share and should share and care about, it's the existence of our statehood. So the only lasting peace would be able to achieve when we realize this very simple truth and get to work to strengthen the army, to strengthen the statehood, at least what's left of it at this stage, and to aim for the protection and the advocacy of the rights of the of Armenian people, be that the Armenians of Artsakh or Armenia, or Armenians living in diaspora, because that's the aim of having a statehood. That's the sole purpose of having a statehood, to be able to protect your own citizens, to be able to provide a safe haven, safe space, safe sphere to prosper. So yeah, I would like to conclude on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Aspram. I also want to talk about a topic that I know you are particularly outspoken about and particularly passionate about. And correct me if I'm wrong, but at the very least, from the sources and the articles that I've read, what we haven't heard Prime Minister Pashinyan mention is the return of our POWs and political prisoners. Aspram, do you have any updates from them, and have you been in touch with their families?
Unfortunately, the issue of POWs is practically, I mean, in political discourse, is practically non-existent, apart from the opposition raising this question and advocating and trying to bring this issue into the political, desperately trying to bring this issue into the political discourse. But when it comes to the representatives of the Armenian state, the ruling party, the other stakeholders, be that the human rights defenders office or other institutions, they are really non-interested, and it's not on their priority list. So we've been hearing so many despicable statements during this years when it comes to POWs, and it's, from where I see it, the sovereignty and the independence of a state can be measured by its ability to protect its own citizens. What we do have right now is the not only the inability, but also the total abundance of the citizens of Armenian citizens by the Armenian statehood. So it's despicable. It's at least to my knowledge, unprecedented that a state is not, at least is not making statements, official statements to raise awareness or to use the international platforms to advocate for the POWs. So we've been in contact, me and my colleagues, we've been in contact with the families, of course. We're trying to be as careful as possible in our statements, in our advocacy, because we do know how fragile the situation is and how important it is to advocate, but not harm the processes, because we do have dedicated lawyers who are advocating and representing the rights of POWs in international courts and procedures. So we're trying to be as careful as possible not to harm the processes as well. But it's never enough. The work that we're doing, it's never enough. And we should put more energy, more dedication into this as well. And we do require the help of our compatriots in diaspora as well, to be vocal about POWs, to be vocal about their rights, and the importance of protection of their rights. So yeah, I think we can do more. Most definitely, we can do more.
Thanks, Aspram. At this point, I would be remiss not to point out that under this solemn landscape, today is also the 36th anniversary of the Artsakh movement. Aspram, as you mentioned earlier, do you see a realistic way for Armenians of Artsakh to return, and in what capacity? Hayk, I think we'll start with you on this one.
Well, you see, it's a very hard topic to speak about. Of course, we need our compatriots to go back to Artsakh. And I will be frank, I won't sugarcoat this idea. If there will be no Armenians in Artsakh, it will become the second Nakhchivan. It's axiomatic. You cannot, I don't know, discuss it. But I cannot never be the hypocrite to make speeches to my compatriots, to my brothers and sisters from Artsakh, sitting from a nice office in Yerevan, a safe one, well, relatable, safe, or from a studio in one of the TV channels. There is not a single possibility at the moment for them to return. Because without international, and I underline, international guarantees for their security, it cannot be conducted. Who will be the law enforcement agencies in Artsakh? Azerbaijanis? Seriously? What will be with those Armenians, our brothers, who will turn 18? They will go to serve to the Azerbaijani army? These are the questions that have to be addressed, and we don't have any responses for them. The official point and the official opinion of the Azeri government on this topic is that the best guarantee for the Armenians of Artsakh is the constitution of the Azerbaijan. Well, I'm sure there is no need to explain that it's not a guarantee at all. So, to sum up, yes, we need our compatriots to go back to Artsakh, but it's impossible under these circumstances, without international guarantees of their freedom and security and preservation of their lives and other rights. So that's the dark picture at the moment. We do need it, but it's impossible under these circumstances. Sorry, I don't really want to sugarcoat this topic. It is what it is.
I appreciate that, Haig. Asfram, I think I'll let you close this out as my last question. A lot of what you've talked about today, a lot of the themes that you've pulled from is regarding unity. I live in Toronto. I know many of our listeners live in the diaspora. What can we do? What role can we play to support this initiative?
I'd love to say a couple of words with regards to your last question as well. So I'll try,
Of course, go ahead.
because they're interrelated and interconnected. So I do agree with Mr. Mamijanyan that at this instant, at this moment, is not conducive to the situation is not conducive to safe return. But international law provides that the Nagorno-Karabakh Artsakh people who have fled their homes have a right to return to their territory of origin. And I think this is what all of us united should advocate for. In addition to the right of voluntary return under the principle of self-determination, all peoples within a coherent identity and connection to a defined territory are entitled to collectively determine their political destiny. So this is the advocacy principle that should guide all of us. We as Armenians, we've been doing this advocacy work for decades, for centuries. I think the after-war period, the 2020, and especially after the November 9th, the situation in diaspora and the relations between Armenian diaspora were hugely affected and negatively affected. So what we need to do is to find a purpose. And I do believe, honestly, I do believe that the advocacy for the people of Artsakh, for their right to return, can be that unifying issue and that unifying purpose. So as you've already heard, a new committee for Artsakh people's rights was inaugurated recently, and the parliament of the Nagorno-Karabakh, which is temporarily anchored in Armenia right now, is taking part in the or not only taking part but also giving the authority to this committee, has given the authority to this committee to advocate for the rights of the Armenians, the people of Artsakh, internationally. And I think our efforts should be directed on this direction, should be I mean, we should put all of our resources to help this committee succeed, because as we've talked about during this conversation, there is no one at this stage who is advocating for the rights of the Armenian people when it comes to the negotiations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. The Armenian side is not represented, so this committee can become the main representation, the true representation of the rights and the values, that representation of the vision of the Armenian people in international talks. So by helping this cause, I mean, if we want to help this cause, if we want to succeed, it's important. It's important to really put an effort, and I'm not sure how long it will last. The struggle will last. I'm not sure how much longer we need to fight for this, but I do believe that eventually they will return to their homes, and the only thing that we can do, all of us, be that in Canada, in Sisian, or in London, we should direct our resources in helping this committee succeed, and in helping helping this committee succeed, and helping them raise awareness, and becoming the lobbying force for this cause.
Thank you for that, Aspram. And hi, Aspram, once again, I want to thank you for your time. I think I took up enough of
I'm
it
really
today.
sorry,
Oh, yeah, go
Katya.
ahead.
Can I have a minute?
Of
It's
course,
not
if you
related.
have the
It's
time,
not
you can have a
related
minute.
to the interview, but I didn't call Aspram today during the day to use this opportunity to make it public. I want to wish happy birthday to my colleague, to my friend, to Aspram. It's not only genetics in case of Aspram. It's not only in her genes, the love to the homeland, but in her mindset and her deeds. It's a pleasure and an honor to fight side by side with you, Aspram. And I'm sure that we are going to celebrate our common victory together, side by side, as we fought. So I wanted to wish you a happy birthday like this, like publicly, because you really deserve it. Once again, happy birthday to you. I wish health and prosperity to you and your family. And that was the last thing I was going to say during this interview. Thank you very much, Gata.
You made me blush. Is entirely. It's a pleasure to fight alongside with you, Hayk, to call you a friend. And yeah, thank you so very much for having us today. The entire team of 301, dear Katya, thank you for hosting. It's always a pleasure to have these conversations with you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, happy birthday, friend. I hope you get to enjoy the rest of your night while it's still your birthday. I know it's quite late. And I want to thank you both once again for your honesty, for your time, and your candor, and just trusting us with this conversation. And of course, for your unwavering dedication to our land, our rights, and our future as a nation. To our listeners, I know I promised that we would have some time for Q&As, but it is quite late, so I will keep those questions on hand for a future conversation. But thank you again for joining us. I hope you found this conversation valuable and insightful. And thank you to the 301 team for continuing to foster these types of discussions and for keeping us informed on the latest developments in Armenia and the diaspora. I want to remind you that 301 is an independent multimedia news outlet that relies entirely on the contributions of you, its followers. If you would like to hear more conversations like this, and I hope you do, please show your support by visiting 301.am or by following the links on 301 social media pages. I want to remind you that all contributions, big or small, can make an impact in ensuring 301 stays online and maintains its place as our trusted news source. Until next time, have a great rest of your day or night, and goodbye.